saying that. But obviously, I didn't learn my employability skills very well. So, um, oh, perfect. So, anticipating कि ऐसा ही कुछ होने वाला है, I thought आज से 30 साल बाद मैं कैसा दिखूंगा, I'll put a picture of my own. So that's me 30 years from now. आज भी कंप्यूटर नहीं आता है, शायद से 30 साल में और भूलूंगा. But the point is, thank you so much. On a serious note, I've been very excited about this opportunity to speak and to contribute, and most importantly to learn what ISECT is doing, as I've just learned, what Microsoft's initiatives have been doing. And going back to my thanks speech earlier in the first session, it truly is about skill development में इतना काम हो रहा है, employable skills, youth. I'll not repeat a session ka title. So what I thought I'll do today is present our perspective on it. There is no good perspective, there is no right, there is no wrong perspective, there is a perspective. So what I thought was I'll present our perspective on what the challenges are, what the possible solutions could be for employable skills among youth, and as I said during inaugural session, हम लोग अधिकतर focus what can you do in rural areas, and I'll sort of keep gravitating back towards that, and that goes back to the original picture as well. So our perspective, so let's define employable knowledge skills, right? So definition kya hai basically? Employable skills. So vision, definition, so knowledge plus experience plus interpersonal communication, in my definition, is employable skills, right? इसको अगर अपन, if you break it apart, आपको समझ होनी चाहिए exactly जो आपको जो काम करना है, उसके लिए आपके पास उस चीज़ का knowledge होना चाहिए, वो भले फार्मिंग हो कि मैकेनिक का काम हो कि रिटेल सेक्टर का काम हो, and so on and so forth. You should have experience in it, because training हो भी गई तो as an employer आपको experience हमेशा मांगते हैं, और most importantly काम तो टीम में ही होना है, right? So interpersonal communication, it just doesn't apply to MBAs and such. छोटी छोटी setting में भी आपस में लोग अच्छे से interact कर सकते हैं कि नहीं, team work कर सकते हैं कि नहीं. If you have acquired all these things, then you have good employable skills. This being the definition, so as a solution provider, as a service provider, as a university, as a teacher, आपके objectives क्या होने चाहिए? And well, there's one way to look at it कि हम बहुत effectively knowledge को deliver कर सकें. I don't think that's the best way to look at it. The second is knowledge इतने अच्छे से deliver करो कि सामने वाला उस knowledge को acquire कर सके. Right? अपन जब tests लेते हैं, so what do you measure? कि आपने कितना सीखा, कितना नहीं सीखा. And then, but what I believe is, at the end of the day, अगर आपको outcome देखना है, तो आप उस knowledge को कितने अच्छे से apply कर सकते हैं. And useful is the key term here, and I'll define useful soon, but that's the key, right? So the objectives that I'm talking about is, what can you do such that you can nurture, you can support useful knowledge application among the youth. And so the need, the way we define, the way we look at it, and the way our perspective is, basically empowering youth from challenging socioeconomic backgrounds to apply knowledge in a useful manner, right? Challenging socioeconomic background बोले तो, गांव से हो सकते हैं, कास्ट के हिसाब से स्लो हो सकते हैं, ट्राइबल एरियाज में हो सकते हैं, but basically we are talking about the bottom strata youth. And they can apply knowledge in a useful manner, जिससे उनको, they can climb up the socio-economic ladder, if you will. So that's how I define the need. On that note, how much, like 5 more minutes I have? 7 more minutes? एक और उधार ले लूँगा. So, so I wanted to spend some more time on this because we have to understand the context. What do we mean by employable skills? Solutions तो बहुत सारे हो सकते हैं. We'll present our perspective, right? So everybody with me thus far? ये तो मेरी टीम वाले लोग हाँ बोल रहे हैं. So maybe you all have different perspective. Let's see if I can break that. So that's being the need. It's very important to understand when we talk about socio-economic background, challenging background. We're talking about schools and learners that you see here, right? Visuals are important. अपन यहाँ पे राजस्थान में बैठ के इंदौर में बैठ के हजार बातें कर लें. Ultimately अगर आपको ऐसा स्कूल भी मिल जाए और इतने सही तरह से बैठे हुए स्टूडेंट्स भी मिल जाएं, तो बहुत बड़ी बात हो जाएगी. In last 4.5 years जो हम लोग यहाँ पर हैं, I visited a lot of, and I know a lot of you must be doing this. I visited rural areas and schools and talked to teachers as well as all the way talked to the decision makers and policy makers. So the need, it's important to understand it is in this context, and this is maybe the best possible thing that we will get out there. And सरकार investment कर रही है, काफ़ी investment कर रही है, सरकार कर रही है. I'm sure आप लोग काफ़ी यहाँ पे जो लोग हैं invested होंगे. मेरी distinguished panel, I know Siddharth is, I was just chatting with Siddharth, they are doing some amazing things. Microsoft is doing great things. So investments are happening, you know, this, and in all sorts of different ways. Right to education है, National Skill Development Corporation की all these schemes हैं, Ministry of Labor and Employment की so many schemes हैं, and so on and so forth. And then of course there are all those NGOs and foundations who are doing all the work. Right? So a lot of investments are being made. The challenges are, investment kar diya, lot of efforts are being put to make sure things are being monitored. And this now talking about where our core expertise comes into picture, specifically honing down on our perspective, ultimately then we just close our eyes, hope everything works, right? So that's why this picture, because अपनी तरफ से इन्वेस्टमेंट किया, खूब जी तोड़ के काम किया, बाहर 100,000 स्टूडेंट्स में, स्कूल्स में, मिलियंस ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स में, करोड़ों में अपना सब चालू हो गया काम. Then what? And that's where अगर आपको employable skills को देखना है तो we have to backtrack, step back, and let's look at the typical challenges जो अपने को देखने को मिलते हैं. अधिकतर अपन इतने इन्वेस्टमेंट्स करते हैं, अपने को वापस क्या सुनने को मिलता है? अरे आइडिया तो बहुत अच्छा था लेकिन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बहुत बेकार था. राइट? स्कूल नहीं थे, दरवाजे नहीं थे, स्कूल था भी लेकिन वो उस दिन इलेक्शन था तो हमारी टेबल चेयर ले गए तो स्टूडेंट्स बैठ नहीं पाए, इसलिए घर चले गए और सब कुछ करने लग गए. IT setup, आज इनॉग्रल सेशन में बात हुई थी, IT setup is usually impractical, and then there is lack of competent teachers and trainers, or the number of them. What I say is, don't read them as challenges. Make them assumptions, because they are basic assumptions and they are the realities of what we deal with in rural and semi-urban India actually. So treat challenges as assumptions. You know they are going to be there. उनको change करना है तो you'll have to work bottom up, and that goes back to employable skills बढ़ाने पड़ेंगे, उनको ढंग से करना पड़ेगा. So that's what you have to do. So the goal should be treat those as assumptions and then create solutions that work around those assumptions, right? And what we believe in is have real-time outcomes. And आप day-to-day basis में अगर किसी स्कूल में जाके या किसी ASEC के आप employability skill center में जा रहे हो, so what can you do such that हर 2 हफ्ते में you can somehow evolve, not improve. You can change your learning techniques, you can change your teaching techniques and such. So it has to be real-time outcomes. It has to be sustainable. सरकार आज इतना पैसा दे रही है, मनी डिवैल्यू हो रहा है, इतना डेट बढ़ता जा रहा है, कब तक ऐसा चलता रहेगा? आज लार्ज फाउंडेशंस का इतना इंटरेस्ट है, कब तक ऐसा चलता रहेगा? यू हैव टू मेक इट सस्टेनेबल एट द ग्राउंड लेवल, राइट? सो उसके लिए कम्युनिटीज को इन्वॉल्व करना बहुत जरूरी है. एंड देन फाइनली यू हैव टू मेक इट स्केलेबल. यू कैन नॉट गो कि आज 100 स्कूल यहाँ पे कर लिए, 100 स्कूल अपने छत्तीसगढ़ में कर लिए, 100 कर्नाटका में कर लिए. इंडिया की नीड्स इतनी ज़्यादा हैं कि यू हैव टू स्केल बहुत सारे स्कूल्स में, बहुत सारे लर्नर्स पे, बहुत सारे एरियाज में, वेरी क्विकली, वेरी एफिशिएंटली, वेरी इफेक्टिवली. And that's where real-time outcomes help, because go out there, start doing things, and then in real time you can start changing them. And that's what we believe from our perspective. Every solution should somehow take these should be the goals for them if you're trying to solve the need the way I had defined it, right? So coming back to our perspective, and this is my last slide, and what we have been doing for the last 4.5 years is basically जो 12-14 साल से अमेरिका में कर रहे थे, वर्किंग इन सिमिलर कम्युनिटीज़, स्किन कलर चेंज हो जाता है, लैंग्वेज चेंज हो जाती है, लेकिन जो बैकवर्ड एरिया है वो बैकवर्ड एरिया रहता है, वो भले अमेरिका हो कि यूके हो कि युगांडा हो कि डीआरसी हो, कॉन्गो हो. सो बेसिकली अगर आपको बैकवर्ड एरिया में सबसे नीचे तबके के लोगों को उत्थान करना है, and if you have to properly use employable, if you have to properly bridge the opportunity gap, that comes down to how if you to grow the employable skills. So we have attained those goals through using our own model, and that's what we've been doing for the last 4.5 years, India mein. And I'll not get into the details of this model, but the crux of that is we call it a 4-quadrant approach. So basically, technology ko use karna padega, but technology has to be such that it can work without power, without internet, but still be able to use them somehow. You have to provide support to the teachers on the ground. You cannot replace them. You should not replace them. We have all this infrastructure. We have to be able to use them. And then we have something called on-site facilitation that sort of somehow complements the lack of infrastructure out there. And then finally, coming back to effective and scientific feedback, this is where the feedback becomes important, real-time outcomes become important, so that वो आपने पूरा circle ख़त्म किया, वहाँ से feedback आया, somehow through technology you can give it back to the top strata पे, come back to trainer support, on-site facilitation, and so on and so forth. On that note, thank you.